Recording in progress.
Okay, everyone, we got the go-ahead signal from Rob. Welcome to the serious business of our budget. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you all an update on the legislative amendments that have been submitted so far. The one-times add up to $1,812,374, which would come out of fund balance. In addition to, how much is already in the budget from fund balance, Norma?
About 3.7 million.
3.7?
I believe so.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Yep.
And the target legislative amendments total 3.93% over and above the 2% that's already built into the budget. So that would bring us up to close to a 6% levy increase. I also wanted to remind you that the 2% and even a tax cap budget with a 3.54% increase in our tax levy would not get us to maintenance of effort, which in my opinion is kind of the bedrock point that we ought to be aiming for in any annual budget. With that all in mind, a maintenance of effort budget, by the way, would bring us to 4.46% tax levy increase. So I hope that we'll all consider that if we're having this much trouble getting to maintenance of effort, we need to think really, really carefully before we add new programs and obligations. That said, I'm going to turn it over to Norma because the first item on our agenda is the capital and debt reserve, and
Okay.
Norma's going to do that.
Okay. Great, thank you. So I know we've been over the reserve recently. I just wanted to, we did a little bit more research, a little more work, trying to help with addressing the budget deficit that we have. And if I can get my computer to work, I can move this slide forward. There we go. So just as a recap, you know, we had our fund balance is calculated based on the 2022, the previous year's audited revenue. And the latest audit that the county has is in 2022, and it was calculated at $208 million. Our fund balance policy states that we keep 18% of an annual year-end revenue, 18% of our unassigned fund balance, and that calculates out to $37,484,322. Our total unassigned fund balance is $72 million, and if we subtract our annual 18% fund balance from the unassigned fund balance, that leaves us with $34,554,000. As we said before, in 2024, our recommended budget, excluding capital, is $3.6 million, almost $3.7 million that's already in the recommended budget, a use of fund balance, leaving our net fund balance at $30,864,038. While I was going through the budget, I was trying to think of ways that we might be able to reach our tax levy. I found 4 projects that I'm going to suggest that we consider as potential use of fund balance and creating a debt reserve account. The legislature will be setting aside funds to pay for this debt over the next 5 years, and this is the 2014 refunding of the 2005 and 2007 debt service, which is currently in our debt service schedule to end in 2027, and the payments are listed above, listed in the presentation. In 2012, various projects. We have there's small amounts that we pay that are scheduled to go over the next 4 years. 2016, we have $265,000 roughly per year for the next 4 years. And 2017, various projects, we have around $560,000 over the next 6 years. And all in total are $5,720,000. And I'm sorry, yeah, $5,720,503. So by adding the additional funds to the debt service reserve, it'll stabilize the tax levy in the out years and reserve $5.7 million in a reserve account to cover the cost of these over the next few years. Setting aside the additional funds as recommended by the policy will allow the county to manage into 2025, when we expect to have our EF MAP increase at $400,000, as well as we have several over-target requests that have been funded multi-year, and there's some big decisions that have to be made over the next, well, in 2025 to decide whether those programs continue or not. If we, so I would recommend that we put aside $5,720,000 to cover these expenses, as well as additional funds to provide us some flexibility to move into the out years. I would recommend that we go with $7 million so that we have some flexibility in the out years to cover some of these additional expenses. And what this would do is allow us to use about $1.3 million, or I'm sorry, reduce our tax levy by $1.3 million, or 2.4% tax levy decrease, by taking that $5.7 million, setting it in a reserve, and allowing us to pay those bills over the next 6 years. 5 years, excuse me. Let me go back. Okay. And the capital reserves, we have, this morning we were looking at the Center of Government and the Public Safety building. Over 2023 to 2025 in the Center of Government, we're looking at potentially spending over $3 million in capital expenses. And in the Public Safety building, if the legislature decides to move forward with that, we're looking at about $5.4 million of capital expenses for both of those projects. So it could be, the legislature could consider putting some funding away to cover the cost of the capital, for capital reserves to cover the cost of the Center of Government and the Public Safety building. And I would note that in previous years, there was a decision made to fund the Center of Government with fund balance at $9 million. This would just simply codify that decision by setting it aside in a reserve to allow us to move forward with these projects. And it would also allow us to be less reliant on the bond issuances and a higher tax rate, or interest rate at this point.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yes.
I'm just confused. How does putting money into reserve accounts allow us more flexibility in spending? Because it seems like we're encumbering the money. So
we would then use it for debt service payments, which would otherwise have to be paid for out of tax levy or something else.
So you're saying take it out of fund balance, put
Yes,
it into reserves.
Put it into reserves.
And so not
use it.
Not put it in the budget as as
an operating expense, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and really, what the practice has been that we've said that we're going to put this money aside to cover these expenses, but there isn't really in the mechanisms that we have presently, there isn't really a place to put that money and track it year after year, right? So we say that we're going to put the money away, and it sits in an account, but it's never really set aside for the specific amount that it's been allocated for, right? So setting up reserve accounts allows us, you, legislators, to be able to track those funds that you've set aside to spend on either debt service or capital programs. And and again, it gives the flexibility moving in the out years to pay some of these bills without raising taxes.
Okay. I don't know how you all want to do this. Are you close to being done with this?
Yeah,
Because I've got lots of questions.
So I just wanted to kind of lay it out in, so with the net fund balance of 30.8 million, if we were to use the debt service reserve as it was shown in the reserve policy, and that's open for discussion, but at $7.6 million, and the capital reserve at 11 million, the net after those two items were taken out would be 12,257,000. If we were to fund the insurance reserve, the workers' comp reserve, and the unemployment reserves as we've identified through the finance office, that would leave a net reserve of 11,210,000.
Are those, when you say net, is that a reserve, or is that what's left in fund balance?
After funding the other reserves, that would be the net fund balance, yes. Thank you for that. Yep.
All right.
And that's it.
Okay.
Let's keep it short.
Thank you, Norma. I think the whole point here is just to help us understand, because there was so much tsuris after the last presentation, to help us understand how funding these reserves doesn't deprive us of monies that we can use, but rather enables us to put money aside and actually use it for specific purposes and free up some of our tax levy by not burdening it with the things we've reserved funds for. So I appreciate Norma's work on this, and I have several people who have questions. Randy, Shauna, Rich, Annie, and Rich again. So Randy?
Yes, thank you, Norma, for going through this exercise. I think it's been a lot of exercises over the last few months that have got to this point, so I appreciate it. So on the proposed capital reserve that you're asking for, those are all current bonds that we're paying, they're loans that we're paying, and those are the payments for those loans?
Correct.
Okay.
And we cannot prepay them.
Okay.
That's why we need a reserve.
I was make sure I understood
Yep.
that. How are we funding them now? Are we basically taking, and this is your point, so we're taking revenue, fund balance, and
Nope, tax levy.
tax levy, we're using money in this, out of our regular budget,
Yep.
right? Whether the money comes from levy or someplace else, it's coming out of our current budget. And you're proposing that we take reserves as of now,
Yep.
okay, taking that 7 million or whatever that number was, and saying, okay, we're not going to use our regular revenues to pay that. We're going to take these fund balances we already have, a savings account. We're going to put those in a reserve so that we don't have to take it out of our regular revenues for that year.
Correct.
Exactamundo.
Yes.
Okay,
And
just
and I will say too, if you don't mind, so the $5.7 million, so if we say we're going to reduce our tax levy in 2024 by 2.4%, and we are going to use fund balance, our cash, to pay for these four debts, we're going to, we should be setting all of that money aside so that we are sure that we can pay those in the long run. Otherwise, we are artificially reducing the tax levy and taking a risk that we might have to pay it again in a
Gotcha, I follow you. So
yeah,
those
I just
are
want to make sure that that was clear for everyone. Yeah.
Those are absolute liabilities, not going to go away.
Right.
Yes, those are distinct and really not, it's not like we're spending it on ongoing expenses because we have a start and an end date and they're within the next few years.
Actually, I met with Lori Scarrett this morning, and she went through all the audit for 22 and page by page, which I really appreciated, and she made a lot of good observations that I'm sure that we'll look at. One of the ones that I was most excited about was the understanding of what our budgets and actuals were monthly, maybe someday, as opposed to once a year. So that would be very helpful.
Our goal.
But understanding the the fund balance and the reserves, this may go to Dan's comments, we don't have to put those in true reserves. We don't have, we could call them assigned. There's other things we can call them, we can still not touch them, right? But you don't have to be reserved. Now, that one for paying the loans would probably make very good sense. The insurance reserve makes very good sense, but maybe not all of them. So thanks.
Agreed, yep. No, and tax stabilization may very well be something that you want to keep in a different account and not in a reserve account.
Okay, that's an issue for another day. We have limited time, lots to do. Let's just focus on the debt service reserve for now. Okay, Shauna.
My question was on the prepayment of all 4 of these projects, so I'm good. Thank you.
All right, Rich.
Given the presentation we had last week, what would this do to our bond rating, if anything?
Actually, this, it shouldn't have any effect on our bond rating because this is to pay off the debt that we would be paying off anyway.
But I recall she said something about if you classify it into a dedicated reserve, it doesn't count towards your fund balance anymore. But then she talked about what the scorecard said and what the
actual, yeah. So it doesn't go on the scorecard, but she does consider it in our revenue.
And it seems to me it's more responsible to do this than to just wait year by year and spend it out of cash rather than designating it. So you think it would not have impact?
I do not think it would have impact, no. And I've talked to Lori about this as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we've talked about, because we had several potential reserve accounts, is not funding most of them until after the first of the year, because then they don't hit us at next year's rating with Moody's, because it's dependent on what's in your audit, and our audit will be as of 12/31. And if, as Randy and Dan so optimistically expect, our fund balance is going to increase, by a substantial amount as a result of certain revenue streams this year that we didn't budget for, then next year we'll be in even better shape, and y'all can spend more fund balance. So, all right, Annie?
Thank you. 2 questions. First is, Norma, you said that this could result in what % reduction in
About 2.4%.
2.4% in the tax levy?
Tax levy reduction, yep.
Is that over a span of years or on an
No, that would be
annual?
2024.
24,
Okay.
But it's not cumulative, though. I mean, it's this year, and then next year, you'd have to do something else, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so
Yep.
to me, this makes sense, if I'm looking at taking, a reduction in my salary or a different job that pays less. If I can rationalize that by saying, here, I have this amount in my account to pay for my car payments over the next 2 years, and my car will be paid off. So I can afford to do this with having less revenue. So to me, that makes sense. So the only other question I had right now was, does this count, and maybe it was kind of answered, towards this money being set aside, does this still count towards our 18% reserve? So it doesn't?
This does not count toward the 18%. This would come out of the unassigned fund balance. So we have the target fund balance is still 18%. That stays over here to pay our bills in the event that we have a major catastrophe.
Okay.
This is the surplus fund over and above that.
Okay,
Part of
so
the
we still
30
need to
million.
maintain the 18%
Yes.
separate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rich, did you have another question, or are you questioned out on this?
I'm questioned out. Thank you.
Okay, Mike Lane.
When you said a 2.4% tax levy decrease, is that against the 6% figure you just mentioned?
Against the one that Deborah is,
Whoever mentioned it, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay.
That
That
we were
would,
looking at a 6%.
so right now, we're
on
sitting
the
at
levy.
2%. We'd have a negative 4% before you start voting. We would start with a negative 4% if we were able to use these funds to pay this debt.
Before we start adding.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
-4 or -0.4?
0.4.
Negative 0.4, yeah.
Thank God we've got a mathematician.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I say 4? I didn't, yeah. Yes, thank you. No, not negative 4. That'd be great.
Okay, Lee?
Do you want to just focus it on discussion, or would you entertain a motion to take the recommendations from the budget officer as a starting point?
Well, I think one thing that we have to bear in mind is that we have yet to fund the reserve account. We've passed the resolution that says we will have reserve accounts. We haven't funded this one. So I honestly don't know if we could act on this with the understanding that going forward we would fund the reserve account for debt service. If people are comfortable with that, we can do that.
And we would bring a resolution when you adopt the budget to
Right.
approve that as well.
So how do you all feel about that? Okay, I see.
How do we feel, say the question, please? How do we feel about?
That we would have a, I don't know, legislative amendment at this point to the capital plan as part of our budget, that we would be funding the debt service reserve to the tune of, did you say 5 point?
At least 5.7.
At least 5.720503, and that we would dedicate the funds in that reserve account to debt service for these particular projects, and that would have the effect that it would have, obviously, on the tax levy recommended budget.
And your question is, how do we feel about doing that
Now,
today, like literally right now?
right.
But you were saying 7 million.
That was what we brought to that's what we brought first to the legislature was $7 million, 7.6 actually, in total debt service reserve. But at the very minimum, we would need to have 5.7 to cover this plan.
This legislative amendment or motion would not preclude funding it at 7. It's just that it would have to be at least the amount on this slide.
And the reason I suggested that we might consider increasing or putting a little bit more into the reserves is to accommodate paying debt service in 2025 when we have the EF-MAP increase of 400,000. So that's another almost 1%, not quite. And
It's like 2/3 or 3/4%, yeah.
And then there's and then we're also facing additional multi-year projects or multi-year programs that will likely or could likely become target, and then we have to figure out how to fund those as well. So it's a planning tool.
If we moved it to the 7 now, would that change the 2.4 reduction?
It will not change the 2.4 reduction, no.
No, that's why I worded it as at least. I've got Dan and then Mike Sigler.
So far, I like what I'm hearing. I just want to make sure I understand it. This would take out $1.28 million from
correct.
this year's tax levy.
Yep.
But then you said that wouldn't carry over into the future. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the 1 point, it would only reduce, well, it could reduce it slightly moving out, but it will only reduce the tax levy in the current year because once we've reduced the tax levy, it doesn't accumulate. It's a one-time reduction.
But I think what's confusing is that in the out years, it will mean that the amounts are covered and they don't have to come out of tax levy.
Correct.
So it may have some impact, but we just can't predict exactly what that's going to be now.
Can I ask it this way?
Yes.
Tell me if this is making sense to you. So sometimes, or every time, when we've talked about using fund balance to offset ongoing expenses, somebody will say, this is creating a hole in next year's budget. Would you is it fair to say this is the opposite of a hole?
That is the opposite of a hole, because we are setting aside the total amount that we need to cover our debt service for all of those years.
It's a non-whole.
It's a non-hole,
Non-hole.
yes. Yeah, it's 100% funded by doing this, but you only realize the tax levy decrease in the year that you initiate the change.
Thank you for coming up with this scenario. I'm really liking what I'm seeing.
You're welcome.
Mike Sigler.
I guess my big question, Dan answered the one, which was the 1.2, but, so I guess our savings is coming from the interest rates that we're going to save on, but how much is our interest? I mean,
You're not going to save anything on the interest rates, and here's why. Because we're county, we can't pay off our debt like we can if it's our mortgage. We have to continue to pay this debt as it's outlined here. So we're not going to save anything. The only thing we're saving is tax levy dollars by saying, okay, we have this influx of cash. Let's use our cash wisely and pay some debt off and set that money aside so that we know we can pay that debt off moving out for the next 5 years.
Well, there
So
might,
we're not really saving.
there might be some interest because this money is going to sit in an account somewhere.
Well, that's true.
Drawing
We will gain
interest,
interest
yeah.
by, yes,
Okay.
that's true. But we won't be saving the bond interest.
Okay. I've got Rich and then Randy.
I think this is worth exploring. It doesn't seem like we need to do this right now, that we should hold this in our pocket and go through our budget exercises and at the end figure out that this makes sense to do, it seems. Is there an advantage to doing it right now?
Why is it going to make more sense at the end than it does now?
Because we might want to put 5.7 in to reserve rather than 7, for example.
But this resolution does not lock us into 5.7 or versus 7. It just says at least 5.7.
Yeah, I just don't know what the advantage is of committing ourselves before we know where our budget lines up.
So choosing to do that now or choosing to do that later, nothing's going to really happen until after the only thing you're going to have is a percentage that a lower percentage tax levy that you're working from, so it kind of helps you gauge what you're spending.
So we know where
and
we
how you
are.
prioritize these funds, because these are new funds and you want to prioritize these well.
Okay. So I've got Randy, Amanda, Annie, and Mike. Amanda hasn't spoken yet, so I'm going to let her go first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I'm understanding this correctly, and we do this now, we'll be starting off with a negative 0.04% versus starting off.
0.4.
0.4. There's a 4 in there somewhere. I'm not a mathematician. And that will definitely change how I'm going to vote on things, because I went through and I marked up what I can't, what I feel like I can and I can't, and that's a lot of percentage there for me.
Okay. All right. So now I've got Randy, Annie, and Mike.
Yeah, I think this is a good option. Basically, it's taken fund balance early, right, in that process. But it's also taking 5.7 million out now for expenses we're going to have years down the road. So we, in my mind, could have a choice to say, we only want to do 1.28 million out of this, and then it would open up the other for whatever we want. Because you're not taking this out of your revenues. So to me, it's another exercise to use our fund balance, and I would like to see it used for other things. So.
Okay, Annie.
Just want to echo what Amanda said, that, and a couple others. If we agree to this now, so I would like to figure this out now. I would like to move it now, because if we are lowering our tax levy right now with, say this 5.7, and we can lower our tax rate by almost 1.3 million so that's 1.3 million more that we might be looking at. We could fund things. So at least I would feel more comfortable funding things if we're starting at negative 0.4. So I would like to consider this now. I would maybe move, that we do the 5.7, and we could increase it later, but let's agree to that, and then we know we have this, a reduced rate.
Is that a motion, Annie?
I would so move.
And Amanda, is that a second? Okay, thank you. Mike Lane, and then I think we're going to move this to a vote because we have talked it
Intended
to death.
second Lee's motion, which I think came first.
Okay. Well, it's the same motion, right?
Unless he withdraws it.
Well, somebody moved it, somebody seconded. We're going to have to vote, like voice vote, roll
You
call.
might want to know who moved. For the
I just
record.
need to know
Who moved and
who we're
seconded?
going with moving and seconding.
You move it at 5.7?
Okay, so Lee moved it and.
Second.
Okay,
Or
we'll let
Amanda can.
Annie second it. All right, a roll call vote because we have members attending remotely, so.
Point of clarification, are we saying we're putting this specifically in reserve?
Yeah, we're putting it in a debt reserve and we will use it as illustrated to service the debts listed on the slide.
And we're putting how much money?
$5,720,503.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks is asked to be excused. Randy Brown.
No.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shartliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
It's 12 ayes and 1 no.
Point of order.
Yes, Mike?
We're going to have a lot of votes the next 3 days. When we have like one person on Zoom like that, could we take a hand vote and then ask that person how he or she votes?
That's up to Katrina and in our guru of rules, Amanda Champion.
I will pull the local law, but I do believe that we were doing roll call votes. And I think it adds to a point of clarification for
People
those.
should be here in person.
Well, it's hard to do that when you're in Japan. Konnichiwa, Greg. Okay.
It's up in the
Well,
middle of the night, probably.
I would move to change that.
Well, for tonight, we're going to have to do roll calls, and then we can check into it further for the meetings we're having tomorrow and Thursday night. So let's move on to the next item. And by the way, thank you, Norma. That was a really good idea.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the Dewar Rapid Medical Response Proposal. Randy?
This budget season's different than last year, so I'm just a little confused on, we're doing things differently, which is fine, I'm not opposed to that. And we were presented with the revenue forecast for 2024. Are we going to be reviewing the revenue forecast, or are we just going to go with what was presented and go? And my point is, one point, is that I believe we budget $800,000 for our investment income in 2024. Is that the correct number?
That sounds right, as recommended by the finance
And I
director.
think it's going to easily make $2 million. So when I look at, because we'll do $3 million this year. So when I look at revenue, I want to be closer to what it really is going to be. And to me, that's another 2%. So what I did is I did a calculation, and I looked to see what the market rates and interest rates are going to change, are going to drop, I think, hopefully in 2024. But they're saying at best 3.5% by the end of 2024, and that's the most aggressive interest rate reductions.
Let me stop you. We do not, in the ordinary course of our budget, second guess what the revenue.
Well, we should, because it's right or it's wrong. I mean, that's why we did this whole fund balance thing. So-
I don't think there are 14 people here who have the competency to figure out what that's going to be. This is why we have a director of finance. It's why we have Norma. It's why we need a budget director. There are things that we can debate, and there are things that we don't know enough about.
But I do. So that's my point.
Well,
So I mean, I bring a certain expertise, as do you, and as everybody else here does. Everybody else has their expertise that they bring, which I greatly appreciate and respect. But I'm just saying we're underestimating that revenue. And
if that's the case, then we'll be in far better shape next year than we are now. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into every line of the budget and debate among 14 of us what that is.
That was one line. Okay, all right, thank you.
You open that door. I saw a hand over here. Dan?
I believe that's a legitimate motion if somebody wants to make that motion to adjust the budget line.
Okay, well, let's vote on that then. Did you want to make that motion?
Make a motion that we increase that budget line to 1.8 million.
Okay, second?
Clarification? Did you say increase it by 1.8?
1.8 million.
To 1.8, okay.
Which budget line?
I don't know, it's not my
This
motion.
would be in the unallocated revenues.
I will second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay.
So I'd like to speak to that.
Can
So if you look at our interest in.
Can you
has a question
clarify
for you
first before?
We clarify which line we're increasing.
This is the interest income that the county makes on its various balances in checking and savings accounts and the near class accounts, which are currently paying 5%. So this year, I think we're going to make over $3 million in that budget line.
Because ARPA funds, we have ARPA funds in there for, among other things.
And by the way, as I told Lori, I'm extremely impressed with the condition of the county's finances. You guys have done a good job of managing money, and so I appreciate that. I was actually pleasantly surprised how much money you had, so I just wanted to share that. And that you weren't in dire straits like many other counties are. But if you look at that budget line, this year we budgeted $100,000 in that account.
Point of information, where is this in the budget book? I'm trying to find it. Do you know?
I don't.
Okay.
Amanda?
Sorry to interrupt.
I'd like to make a motion to table this amendment until the end of our budget process. Oh, excuse me, on Thursday.
That's friendly.
We have a list of amendments that we were planning to go through tonight, and this is not one of them. And there's too many questions and confusion, so.
And Lori's not here and Lisa's not here.
That's my motion.
That's
Okay.
That's friendly. That's fine with that.
We'll bring further information for that.
Okay, so is there a second? Shauna seconded the motion to table.
It was friendly.
It was friendly, okay.
And this would be to table it to the end of our regular program here on Thursday.
On Thursday, yep. And we'll bring further information.
Okay, thank you. Now, can we move on to the Dewar Rapid Medical Response? This is Mr. Sigler's amendment, so I guess I'm going to let him talk about it.
All right, I'm going to actually try to move to amend the amendment because it's in its target. It really would be more appropriate for it to be one-time contingency. This is the rapid response program that we've been talking about. I was talking to Norma about it, and it hadn't really made it into the budget. And I was like, oh, well, we kind of need to get it in there. So that's why I moved it. I mean, do we need any more information on what this is?
I don't think we need any more information on what it is. I think we can all express our gratitude to Michael Steitley and his staff who put this together. It was a heavy lift. And I don't think anybody here contests the need for it. I think the real issue is going to be how we pay for it, and whether there's cost sharing and what that's going to look like. So I think that's where our discussion will be. So.
Well, and I think that's why it's more appropriate as one-time contingency money as opposed to target. I mean, if it's target, then
So
up the game, really. We don't have a negotiating position, so.
We need to move it. Second it.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, so,
You're moving it as a one-time?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right. And Veronica's seconding.
Yeah. Wait, is it one time 1 year or multi-year?
One time, 1 year. We'll get it off the ground, and then it'll work so great, you're going to say, God, I want to fund that again.
Okay. So I've got Rich, I've got Annie, anybody else? Randy. All right, Rich.
Okay, thank you. Mike, thank you for putting this on the amendment list. I would ask if you'd consider it friendly to change the numbers a bit. Because we're talking about a cost share, I think it makes more sense for us to be clear on what we're trying to do. And I would make two essential changes. One is to change the startup costs to using repurposed vehicles. And this was presented to us in June. And frankly, if we're going out to the towns and saying we want you to share the cost with us, I think we should try to do this as cheaply as possible. And it is an option that we have vehicles in the county we could repurpose. That would mean that the startup cost would go from $219,000 down to $54,000. I've talked to Michael Steitley about this, and I've indicated he indicated there's a concern. They've identified vehicles, but they may not work. They may not be available as they need because they might not be able to replace them in time. I said if that occurs, they could come back to us and talk about it, and we'd figure it out and get them a vehicle. But in the meantime, it would reduce our one-time startup cost to $54,000, that we would be showing the towns that we're really trying to be as economic as possible with this. And then the operating costs, I would put half of the remaining amount into contingency. Instead of $463,000, I would put $232,000 in contingency, and we would then go and negotiate with the towns and get our cost share formula worked out. So
How you would do it, so that we can go to the towns?
Right, right. So I would ask if that would be a friendly amendment.
I'd say it's friendly. My only concern is that it would get in the way to us starting. And I think it's more kind of important to get it started. But
I certainly share with you the concern. We should do this in 2024 if we can find a way to do it. My other concern, as Deborah stated, is how do we pay for it? And if we set a precedent where we pick up the full cost, I've already heard some towns saying, well, that would be just fine.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's the appropriate division of cost.
Okay. No, I'd say that's friendly. I mean, it gets us started, and that's the most important thing. So.
Well, there is a rule that Amanda always reminds us of, that even if the mover and the seconder consider it friendly, if anyone here does not, then we have to vote on that amendment. So is there anyone who considers this not friendly?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize, Dan. I'm just trying to follow the rules because I don't want to offend the goddess.
Well, I didn't even know if Veronica found it friendly. I mean,
Well, I guess point of information, can you say the numbers of the dollar amounts and where you would have them go?
It would be $54,000 in one-time funds for startup expenses, and that's essentially for all the equipment to outfit the trucks. And then $232,000, which would be half of the first year estimated operating expense.
Target or one time?
One time.
One time, I believe, for the operating expense, because that would get us started in the first year with a cost share, and we'd probably have ongoing negotiations.
Is that into contingency?
Yes, it would go to contingency.
So can somebody tell me what that total is?
286.
I'm sorry?
286.
Okay. Dan?
So the reason I said it's not friendly, because I'm operating under a different understanding, and I guess I want to ask Michael or whoever can answer this question. I thought that in every single version of this, the county was picking up the first year's cost. There was never going to be a cost share with the towns in the first year. So I guess let me pause there and find out if that's accurate.
Dan, I don't have an answer to that personally. I'm not sure if anybody else does. I know that was discussed, but I don't know if it was ever decided on that that was the strategy.
Okay. Anything else, Dan?
Yeah, I thought I had read that, but here's why I think it has to be that way, is because the towns, just as we are doing their budgets right now. They cannot put in a dollar figure for 2024 unless we ask them to.
And I have to say, although I'm very much in favor of cost sharing in some form or another, we haven't even decided which towns and what formula. So that's an additional problem.
Exactly. So how can we possibly be expecting them to cost share in 2024? How could we possibly even do that? We don't have a number for them. I always assumed, and I will try to look back and find out if it's more explicit, that the county picked up the first year, and it's the second year where we start cost sharing. And one more thing I'll say, we hope to get grants to cover this. So that's why we not asking them to cost share this first year. How can we ask them to budget money for something that we're hoping to get a grant for that they will have budgeted unnecessarily for? It's a big deal to a town to budget, $20,000. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So, first order of business, we need a second on Rich's amendment, and that's seconded by Mike Lane. Okay. Secondly, I've got Shauna, Mike, and Rich in the queue, but I have Lisa, and she comes first.
Thanks, Deborah. Just to Dan's point, and no commitment had ever been made on behalf of the county around the budget. What we committed to and what we had been keeping the legislature informed of was our intention to apply for these grants in 2024, which would hopefully cover the full cost of the program. But being that those grant cycles didn't line up with the budget process, and we didn't want this program to be considered outside of the budget process, this is why we're considering these matters now, and none of it lines up necessarily with the municipality's timeline or budget process. So here we are.
Thank you, Lisa. That helps. And I do have some questions about those grants before we move on to discussing the rest of it. Would the grants that we've applied for cover the whole thing? For the first year.
So the second grant, the Shared Services Initiative grant that we will be applying for by the end of the year, would potentially, if it's fully funded, it would cover the full costs of the first year. The other grant that we applied for, the Local Government Efficiency Grant, will cover one vehicle.
Okay. All right, let's all mull on that. Meanwhile, I've got Shauna, Mike, and Rich on the amendment.
Yeah, so I am concerned about us just saying that we're going to worry about the first year and then we'll figure out the second year next year, because as we're looking at doing this, we're hiring people, we're offering them benefits, they're leaving other jobs to take this one. And this is something that I think is very, very important, and I think we need to figure out a way to pay for it. But I also struggle with the fact of us using one-time money and us assuming that either, hopefully it would be wonderful if we received grants, but also assuming that there's going to be buy-in by the towns that currently don't have these services, because some of the feedback that we have received has been quite the contrary. And as county legislators, we have to make really hard decisions. Sometimes it's for people that live in different districts. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a county service that we're going to be providing. I would actually like to see half of the funds come out of our target for this, because I think that we are going to have to continue to sponsor this in years to come. And there are going to be some things that we're going to change about it, some things we're going to nail running out the gate, but but this is always going to be a work in progress. And I think as a county, if we're going to provide this service, then we're going to have to associate some taxes to it.
Okay, so I've got Mike, I've got Rich, I've got Veronica, and I've got Greg. Please confine your remarks this round to the proposed amendment. So, Mike?
I support this amendment because of the things that have been said by Rich, but also by some of the things that Shauna just said. What I worry about is if we hire people in year one and we aren't ready for year two, just as you said, Shauna, that's not fair to do to employees. And these are skilled employees because they have to be trained to respond to people's
They're hard to get.
life-threatening situations. But we've got to have the deal hammered out before we can move on. And so I think it makes a lot of sense what Rich has proposed here.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, just to Dan's point, I believe Bridget Nugent sent an email documenting that in June, I think it was, at a TCOG meeting, that the county was clear in saying this anticipates cost sharing. Where the confusion, I think, has arisen is if we get the grant, yeah, it's all paid for the first year. What we're trying to do here is to make sure that it happens in 2024. We could just wait for the grant. We could put nothing in our budget, and if we get the grant, the money's there. But the consensus seemed to be that the need was great and that we shouldn't put it off. With that said, I think Shauna makes a good point that this need is not going away. It will be here in 2025 and 2026. If this is a successful approach, I would say we put the 232 into target rather than one time. That's probably the better thinking.
So are you amending your amendment?
I'm not sure I can, but.
Okay. All right. We've got, I'm going to let Greg speak because it's hard when you're in Japan and nobody pays any attention to your
And it's 6 a.m.
sort of brown hand that blends into your background.
And it's 6 a.m.
Sorry, thank you. I was trying to make my hand yellow, but my technology skills are not where they used to be. I tend to agree with Dan and Shauna, and I think it's important that we establish this first year. I think that there's a way to do this where you would put the 232 into target, but then also put an additional 232 into contingent one-time funding, because I do think we need to give the towns ample notice to put this into their budget. I think we need to make it very clear in this process that we are not the sole funder of this program, but we have committed at least half to target, and those that want to participate in this program will need to fill in the other half, or we'll need to find grant money or something. But I think that there's a hybrid between what everybody's sort of proposing, and I tend to align more with Dan and Shauna on this, that we should establish something in target, but we also need to give the towns time, and we should really be addressing the first year, because in the end, if we're going to get grant funding, then this is kind of a moot conversation, because we just be able to take that funding for that first year.
Thank you, Greg. Personally, I think that's an excellent compromise. So I have Veronica, Annie, Randy, and Sigler.
Two questions, I'll ask them both. One, it sounds like many of us are in agreement that this program needs to start in 2024 somehow. I would be worried that if we don't allocate, at least into contingency, enough money for all of the operating expenses as opposed to half, that it might not get off the ground if the grant doesn't come through. Because that would require, the towns aren't a monolith, it would require every individual town under us as yet undetermined cost sharing model to allocate money this year, right? So is it reasonable to be wary that this wouldn't start if we don't allocate the full operating cost amount. I'm fine with the reduction on the vehicles. And then second question about target versus one-time. I get the thing about to hire people needing more than 1 year worth of funding. So I think I would prefer this to be a multi-year, and likely moving into target. But when I've seen this program described, including in the proposed amendment, it's referred to as a pilot program. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 3 years. And my newbie impression is that it is pretty common to start things out as multi-year and then move them into target, as opposed to doing pilot programs in target. But I welcome comments.
Thank you. Annie?
Yes, I would also like to see at least half of this in target. As we're talking about the tax levy, this isn't something that we're looking at just trying it and we think it's going to go away. It's probably going to be, I think, very successful. When we look at protecting our residents in especially the rural areas, I equate this a little bit. For instance, with COVID, we didn't look at, where are more people getting COVID, so we're going to just, we're going to have those folks pay for it. I mean, we might have a model within the coming year where we might do some cost sharing, but I think predicating the funding now on that, and as people said, the timing's not working with the municipalities. So I'd like to see this get off, as quick as we could. And I'm also wondering if we do have one municipal official here. It is a village, but we have Mayor Rodenhart from my district, and just to see if we've gotten anything wrong, that we've said about, what we've, because we keep saying, well, we've already always said that there's going to be a cost share. Is that also your impression, Roden?
Thanks for having me on. From the TCOG perspective, we actually never got as far as how it was going to be paid for. Our mandate at the TCOG level was to work with DOER to develop the plan and come up with a plan, and then see if it was feasible at all, and what impact we thought it would make. So I can't say that we were under the impression that there would be a cost share or not.
Okay, so we haven't figured that out.
That's helpful. Thank you, Roden. Okay, Randy and Sigler, I want to remind everybody, time check. And then I want to ask a question before we have further comment. This is a procedural question. What I seem to be hearing is a taste for an amendment that pays for half of it out of the tax levy, puts half one-time money into contingent fund. The advantage of this contingency, obviously, is it'll be there if we don't get the grant. It'll be there if we have to get through the first year before we get some sort of cost-sharing arrangement agreed to by all of the participating municipalities. And if it's not used, it'll be available for the next year. Procedurally, since we already have one amendment that Mr. Sigler filed, and now we have another amendment on the floor to Mr. Sigler's amendment, are we amendmented out?
Yes.
Okay.
I can fix that.
So if we wanted to,
Rich would have to withdraw his amendment.
Right, that's what I was going to say. If we wanted to move to this compromise that Greg and Shauna and Annie and Veronica seem to be supporting, and frankly, I like it myself, Rich would have to withdraw his amendment, and then we could consider the alternative. So how do you feel about that, Rich?
Or we could vote on it.
I feel a little bit like Dan, I think, earlier. My concern is that if we pick up the whole cost, what we're doing is we're making the city taxpayers pay for this service, and they aren't getting the benefit. And that was part of the reason for a cost share. is that if the county tax pays for half of it, city taxpayers are paying, and there's some systemic benefit you can argue that they receive. But if the whole amount is picked up by the county, city taxpayers are paying equal to all of the townspeople and not receiving anything for it. And that's part of the reason that cost share is really important here. Plus, you have municipalities that have functioning ambulance services, like the village of Trumansburg and Groton and Dryden, and you want to use some mechanism to differentiate the value of that and to make sure that service levels don't just devolve to the county, either on the ambulance services or the rescue services. So I'm reluctant to send a signal to the town saying, we got this, for all of those reasons.
Okay, so I guess we're going to vote on
We need
Rich's
to vote.
amendment, and if it passes, then we just move right on, and if it doesn't, we can consider a different amendment.
Either way, we can have another amendment.
Right, okay. So I've got hands from Randy and Mike. Did you want to address Rich's amendment, or?
I have a question for Michael Stitley on the program itself before I vote on it,
Okay,
based on what the towns have asked me about.
okay.
In each, the two towns in my district are actually meeting Wednesday and Thursday for their meeting, and this is on their agenda to talk about. So, and I know at least one town is really focused on not being able to pay whatever share that may be. But we'll cross that bridge. I'm fine with the funding thing that you guys talked about. But but my question is for Michael. Are these, they're going to be staffed by a team, 2 people per car, or 1 person per car?
1 person per vehicle.
That was expressed to me by one of the fire people, that they would never send 1 person out to a call. That they always make sure, if they don't have 2 people, they don't send them because they're worried about the safety of those people. So that was just a concern they shared with me. So.
Okay, Mr. Sigler.
I just wanted to say this is pretty exciting. I mean, conceptually, everybody's on board. That's pretty great. Now we're just, and we're not really debating about the amount of money. We're debating about where it comes from, and that's
Yes,
pretty
but
terrific.
you know the devil's always in the
Hey,
details.
we're going to get this done, Deborah. I'm telling you, it's going to be great.
All right, let's vote on Rich's, Mike.
I'm sorry, but my amendment would have done half of it target into contingency. Rich's amendment here, he's looked at this and figures we can do it with a little less money, and that's why I supported it.
Okay, but we're going to vote on Rich's amendment now.
Can we state the amendment,
Yeah,
please?
state the amendment.
State the amendment, Rich.
This would reduce the one-time startup cost to $54,000 and putting $232,000 into target contingency, but target.
Okay, and that's it? That's all that would be funded?
Yes.
Okay, that's the amendment, folks.
Wait, now that's even more confusing.
Point of information, is there a contingency target contingency?
Not really. I was going to ask, if this passed, I was going to ask a question about it. Can I ask a
It has
question?
to
say
be
that
the
again,
original amendment that he brought forward. He can't change his amendment from earlier. I don't think that was your amendment from earlier, Rich.
It was one time.
Yeah, I think I put it in contingency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we would have to vote on that, or you can take it back.
But you
withdraw it.
can't, I had a question about this too. If you put something in target, can you then put it aside in contingent?
No, and I'm kind of wondering why it would go in contingency anyway. No, it should go in the department's budget, whether we put that in a separate account, separate line, but.
Yeah, the
if it's
rationale
target
for
increase-
contingency was because we would then negotiate the cost share with the other municipalities.
Well, so you're going to have to make a choice. It's either in target or it's one time and in contingent. So which is it?
If I can say it's in target, I would put it in target based on Shauna's, but that's not what I originally moved.
No.
Oy vey.
I think it just seems to me we've done target and contingency before. I may be wrong, but it seems we have over the years.
What you want to do, people?
Well, Rich has
We
to
will figure
decide
out
if
a
he
way.
wants to
The
withdraw
ball's
or
with
not.
Rich now, right?
They aren't when it isn't ripe.
Figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, for speed, I would withdraw if I can then make a different amendment to the motion.
Dan?
Are you withdrawing it? If you okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dan?
I just want to speak against the target idea for a minute, and if that's what we come down to, then I will still support it. But this is like Veronica said, this is a 2-year pilot, and believe me, I hope this works. I hope you can hear. I've only spoken positive of it, but it might not work. That's why it's a pilot. Why would we put something in target if we don't know that we're going to do it going forward? So I would support any version of whatever anyone's doing, but I don't think it should be in target.
People, if I don't kill somebody before the end of tonight, it's going to be a flippin' miracle. Rich?
I would move to amend to change the startup cost to $54,000 in one-time money and $232,000 in target.
Seconded by Shauna. Okay. Do we need to discuss this, or have we not discussed it to within an inch of its horsey little life?
Let's see if that's friendly.
I'm just confused now. I thought.
You and me both.
Like, okay, what do you mean okay, you're reducing the startup by 54, not 254.
254.
Oh, 254.
Yes.
I thought you meant, okay.
2 like TO.
Okay.
54.
I thought it was 286.
Totally confused.
Well,
Okay.
there's 2 aspects to it.
Cars are 54.
The cars are 54, and then, and
Okay.
that you're going to put in one time, Rich?
Correct.
Okay, and then how much are you putting in target?
$232,000.
And that's operating.
That's operating, yes.
That's a total of 286. Okay. Does everybody understand this?
No 232 in contingent. You're not.
No, it's
doing
not.
that?
Not doing that.
No. Okay. And Shauna seconded it, and that's how you understood it. Okay. Can we vote on that?
Yes.
All right. Roll call.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
No.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
13 ayes, 1 no. Motion passes.
Oh, my God, you guys.
that's a good
This
one.
is fabulous. Give
Very
you
good news.
a round of applause.
Well, that was the amendment.
No, but now we have something specific to vote on.
I have a point
Okay.
of order, though.
I'm sorry?
Gordon's not even smiling. I don't even know if this was worth it. I mean,
Okay, so that was the amendment.
That was the amendment. Okay. So do we have further discussion, or can we vote on this as a solution to funding a much-needed program? I see a hand from Japan.
So if we could, I'm wondering what the group's thought would be if we put the remaining 232 in one time to cover the first year as contingent if we aren't able to get the towns on board with cost sharing, because I do think it's important to kick off this program.
Okay, procedurally, can we consider that?
Amendment.
An amendment to the amendment?
no, we already voted yes on the
No,
amendment.
it's an amendment to the amended resolution.
Yeah, I just, if we're allowed to do that, that's fine. Amanda says we can.
I'll second that.
All right, so that's a motion, Greg, and Shauna seconds it. Further discussion?
Just repeat.
Repeat it.
Yeah, so I'm proposing that we put the other half, the 232 is the number that was in Rich's resolution, that we put an additional 232,000 as one-time money contingent, and we would, in an effort to try to work out cost sharing, but we would be just doing that for the first year to cover the full cost if we weren't able to work out cost sharing or get any grants to get this pilot off the ground.
Could someone state the numbers again? I'm still,
32.
232 is one time,
Contingent,
and that's it.
that's it.
Does that need a second?
Shauna seconded it. Mike?
If you do this, I have real concern that you'll never hammer out an agreement with the towns or all of the towns.
Dan and then Shauna.
So I want to speak again about why one time is the right way to go for another reason I didn't mention before, which is if we leave in target like the current amendment, the current proposed amendment, and we get the grant, we don't need that money. We just put money into target unnecessarily. And why would we do that? I just don't quite get it.
This is in addition to the money that's in target. This would be in addition, as I understand.
That's why I'm asking what the dollar amounts are then.
518.
Unless I'm misunderstanding, I think what Greg and Shauna are aiming to do is to put one-time funding for the other half of the cost of the first year in a contingent fund, so that if we don't get the grants, or if we can't reach an agreement with our constituent municipalities for the first year, we can at least carry the program through for the entirety of 2024.
So it's 232,000 in target and 232,000 in one time? Is that what the proposal is?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and if I've misstated that, Greg or Shauna will correct me, okay?
Right. I guess, point of order, it's only the additional 232 putting into contingency that's in the amendment to the amendment on the floor right now.
Right.
So that's what we should be
But
discussing.
what we'll end up with is various pots of funding for the entire first year. Okay. Anybody else? Shauna?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, Mike, as far as there's no incentive for towns, villages to join in, and that's absolutely right. I mean, you're going to have some that find importance in this and some that do not, and at the end of the day, I mean, I live in the town of Ithaca. Cuba Heights covers us. City of Ithaca sometimes comes in as well, and so I'm kind of in that boat that Rich is as a City of Ithaca resident. But for me personally, if I have to pay a little bit more on my taxes so that someone in Caroline or Newfield or Brooktondale gets the service, I am absolutely all right with that. And that, you know, I feel like most of our taxes, that's just what happens. We take care of each other. So this is something that's important, and that I think unless you're faced with having an ambulance come out to you in a rural area and realizing that 26 minutes to wait for someone is a dangerous situation, I think we should all, every single one of us around the table should have concern about our neighbors.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Now, this is yet another amendment. This isn't the final. Okay.
Yes. This is to put $232,000 in one-time contingent fund. Okay. Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
No.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
No.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
It's 12 ayes, 2 noes. Motion passes.
Okay. So what we've got now is the cost of the vehicles, $57,000 in one time. 54, okay. Half of the first year's operating costs, 232 in target, and another 232 from the fund balance in contingent. That's what we're voting on. So are we ready to vote on that?
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
That's unanimous, 14 ayes.
Now we can clap.
Just a clarifying question.
All right.
Yeah.
We had talked before about having a rolling thing once in a while to see each thing that we vote for, or maybe we want to do it at some point during the night, how that affects the tax levy.
Okay. All right. Moving on now to something a little less complicated. Local arts programming, community-based arts partnership.
There's another doer one.
But that's not minus, did you minus the 2.4 yet?
We're down 0.2.
Oh, up there. Okay.
Let me bump that up a little bit.
The total's at the top. Okay,
Yep.
negative 0.2.
Okay. Sorry, we have doer contracts. Mike Lane.
Yeah, I had moved this as a, or I'd like to move it as a one-time. This is for helping contractor licensing fees for the various emergency response organizations so that they can be in the CAD system. Mike, am I saying that correctly? And I thought it made sense that we are helping to finance that.
Yes, sir, that's right.
Okay, does it, Lee?
Second.
Okay, Lee seconds. Does anybody have any questions about this? If not, let's vote. This is one-time funding, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
It's 14 ayes, motion passes.
Okay. Now, we have the local arts programming, community-based arts partnership. This is Mr. Sigler's.
All right, so I'd like to move that, please. Local arts program and community-based arts partnership.
Okay, do we have a second?
Greg.
Greg, okay. Explain this,
All
Mr.
right.
Sigler.
So last year, so this local arts program is kind of difficult because it doesn't fit into STBB because that is for tourism. This is not really about tourism. However, last year Tompkins County did support this Arts in Our Community program. We gave it $132,000. Now that went to 3 different grant programs that was administered by the Community Arts Partnership, Grants for Arts Programming. The reason this is important, at least to me, this brings arts education out into the rural areas, so Lansing, all the other rural areas, obviously. It creates new work. It's for artists in part, so, and those artists can then bring that out to the community at large. It also, though, is arts and education grants, and that's for art instruction in the different public schools and after-school programs. And it teaches non-art subjects. Now these grants, let me give you some numbers here. Just let me go down here a little bit. Last year, with support from Tompkins County, it allowed CAP to fund 93 different grants all throughout the county. That was more than double the previous year of 44. The state did come in, they had matched that amount of money too. So it was, we don't know where the state is going to come in with money this year, but we kind of matched what the state was doing. The average grant size was $2,500. Nearly a third of the funding went to programs involving children and youth, 31% for rural arts programming, and 33% went to targeted communities of color. So we're hitting a lot of people with this amount of money. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but this is kind of where we were last year. And it does allow arts around the county, so it does hit every town, which is kind of a great program as well. So that's kind of a summary of where we are with it.
Any questions? Amanda and Dan?
Yeah, you said we did this last year
We did 132,000
in our budget.
in our budget.
Anyone remember how I voted?
You were incredibly supportive. The speech was.
It was a different year.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Dan?
I will be voting against this as I did last year. And I will do it not because I don't support the program, I support it very much. I will do it because it's arts funding, and I think it should come out of the fund where all our other arts funding comes from, which is the hotel tax revenue. It was stated that that money it doesn't fit neatly into a category that they already fund, and I just want to remind everyone that there's no law that says what those categories have to be, and they can make any category they want, and they should just step up and fund this arts funding as they fund other arts funding. And the reason I'll say even that even more strongly is because last year they exceeded the revenue from the year before by $1.4 million. The hotel tax revenue just shattered the record last year. So great, let's spend some of that money on this arts program rather than property tax as it being the source. Thank you.
Randy?
I agree with Dan.
I do too. Okay, anyone else? Time to vote.
Oh, Rich and Veronica.
Okay, Rich, Veronica?
I would move to reduce the amount to 100,000, and I could support it at that number.
I would say that's friendly.
Okay, so.
Can you use your mic?
I would say that's friendly.
All right, is it unfriendly to anyone on the floor? No, so that's what you're voting on, $100,000. Veronica?
I also agree with Dan, though I do want to note, this is coming out of fund balance, not property tax as proposed, right?
Right, it's one time. Okay, ready to vote. Katrina?
Okay. Shauna Black.
No.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
No.
Amanda Champion.
No.
Susan Curry.
No.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
No.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
No.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
No.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
No.
5 ayes and 9 noes. Motion fails.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the whole health early intervention, which be a multi-year, 3-year, one-time at 206,828. I just want to clarify, that is an estimated cost net of what can be billable. And is that 206,828 each year of the 3 years?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Shauna.
Yeah, so I would like to move amendment for the whole health, asking for 206,828 for 3 years. That would be per year, and it would come out of our fund balance each year.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Need a seconder?
Okay, I'm going to let Dan second it because it's something that you two worked on together. And thank you for that. And thank you to Frank for his input. Any other comments? Randy, and then Mike.
Yeah, I think I support this amendment, and I appreciate you working on this. I like it whenever we can get money from the state, so.
Okay, Mike Lane, and then Rich.
I was on the fence on this until we had the public forum, and I was convinced after hearing some of the speakers that night. And I just want to say that that's one of the reasons we have the public forum. And I feel that that ensured my vote for this.
Okay, I've got Rich and then Annie.
Mike just said what I was going to say. I didn't have deep feelings on this. The budget forum, that was a very powerful speech.
Annie and then Shauna.
Thank you. I have done early intervention programs before, so I think this is really important. I'm glad to support it. I just want to, also wanted to ask, because my colleague Randy Brown said something about getting money from the state. The funding, we're billing, so we might get some money back, right?
Yeah, so I could talk a little bit to this as well. So essentially, we asked Frank to help us with the crisis that we're seeing in early intervention with long wait times, shortage of providers, and he presented two different scenarios. One of them included adding a fee per all of the therapists that we work with. Wasn't really sure that that would increase the providers or decrease the wait times. The second one is actually adding staff to county staff. So it's going to add 4.2 staff. They would be full-time employees, and they would be a core group of members that could meet, do care conferences, and that we would manage. The idea behind that is that they could be independent people that maybe don't do early intervention anymore, that decide to come back to early intervention because of county salary, consistency of hours, and benefits. But the whole idea is that we have someone, they're going to be working 35, 37, 40 hours, whatever's full-time. And they're going to be able to bill Medicaid, private insurance, and so that would be essentially the 206,828 is the delta between the salaries minus the reimbursable amount, and we come to the 206,828. Obviously, this is not going to be the complete fix-all for our early intervention issues, but I think it's a really good start. And it's a 3-year pilot. If we see that we need to make changes next year, we can always do that. But I've definitely received some positive response, and people are excited about this.
Thank you. Dan, you had a hand up?
Good, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Ready to vote?
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
14 ayes. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Whole Health Outreach Worker. This was filed by Mike Lane. It's $250,057. Is that each year or spread over 3 years, Mike?
No, that would be, I believe, each year. I'd like to move it. I just think that this is something that we can do for the rural areas with this outreach. And I think they've had some success. I think this started in August, according to the description. And that they've been working with the other outreach organizations. And we've had some success with outreach in the city. And I'd like to see it continued for the various services in the rural areas as well.
Do I have a second? Annie? All right, hands, discussion? Ann, and then Shauna.
Yeah, I also second what my colleague, Mr. Lane said, that, the rural areas, we also have issues where people need assistance, and very often they're compounded by lack of transportation, proximity, getting to appointments, accessing service. So please, I'm hoping my colleagues vote for this to help expand this service to the rural areas.
Shauna.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background, and I know that Frank's here and he could provide some backup if I get this wrong, but we received grant funding in order to provide these outreach workers last year, and unfortunately that grant funding has ended. And so that's why we're seeing a gap, and we've had the outreach workers in place for the past year. The one thing I will say is that I've had some concerns about the staffing, and we've talked about outreach workers in our community, how we have so many different agencies that have outreach workers, and is there duplication of services? I know that right now we're having the conversation about our current outreach worker system, and is it really targeting the areas it needs to? So I am going to support this. However, if it ends up getting funded, I would ask that we take a look at our outreach workers, because I'm just not sure that the way that they are right now, that we're utilizing people the way that we should be. And I think there's tons of overlap and not enough communication amongst the organizations that are doing it.
How many outreach?
There's an outreach worker at the door right now.
That might be the pizza. Well, go get the pizza. This is important. We know that you're going to vote for it, Shauna, so yeah. Randy?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this, and I agree with what Shauna said, that there is some overlap there. Is this funding to an organization? It's not our employees. We're funding Family and Children's Services?
I see Frank shaking his head, and in Shauna's absence, I'm going to let him answer that question.
Yes, that would be correct. It would be continuing a program with Family and Children's Services.
We contract with them.
Correct.
So how do we pay? Is it by the worker, or is it just by the number of clients they serve, or how does that work?
It's two outreach workers. They have most of the equipment, including a van that they purchased with the original grant. So this is primarily for the workers, and then some of the things that they need for the people that they're serving, and other, kind of overhead type costs that go along with contracting.
So $250,000 a year gets us 2 workers?
It does.
And stuff.
And overhead, and they need supplies and
Okay.
bus passes. I'm sorry.
Veronica and then Lee?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to support this, I guess, for reasons that have mostly been said. I think that while I support the broader intention to better coordinate and maybe even streamline the street outreach workers we have, they're not looking at just people in one place. And I don't know how many rural programs there are, but this is important because it's hard for people with I'm trying not to say severe service needs because that has a clear definition. People with a bunch of
complicated
service needs. It's even worse if you are out of the middle of the city, generally speaking. And I think the one-to-one interactions that these outreach workers can provide are really valuable. I guess this is sort of responding to a question I heard you ask how many outreach workers there are, and I don't know, but someone was recently emphasizing to me that outreach workers come in many kinds, and as for street outreach workers who go around outside and look for people who may be in need of help of some kind, there's only about 7 right now. That's not, I think these positions are not currently filled, is that right? So that would not be including them. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's lots of other sorts of outreach workers that are not doing the walking or driving a beat type deal. Couldn't say how many there are.
Thank you. Lee and then Travis.
Question, then a comment. Approximately how many clients would these 2 positions serve?
That question's for me, Lee. I'm sorry. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I can certainly get that for you.
The JOT form indicates that during the first 7 months of 2023, the rural outreach team helped 165 clients through 458 encounters.
Thank you. That helps. My inclination was to vote no, but having recently been trying to identify help for some rural residents that are trying to stay in their houses with health concerns, rather than go into long-term care, I'm willing to invest here. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. Okay, Travis and then Annie.
I'm going to support this program. I think the rural outreach workers are extremely important. I've worked with them. I've seen what they can do. I do have some concerns about pretty much what Sean has said. There isn't the understanding of who does outreach, what agencies do outreach is very, very wrong. There were 4 outreach workers and a supervisor through Office of Children and Family Services. So there wasn't 7 of them. There are other agencies that have outreach workers. The rural outreach work that these folks were doing was extremely important to folks in this county. So I'll support it. But I do think that we need to look at who is actually supervising and who is actually running that program as we move forward, whether it's an RFP or a reevaluation of what's happening now.
And further to that point, Travis, I'm curious to know why this has to be 3 years and not 2. I mean, it just seems like 3 years is a long time, and what seems to happen generally is that we get 3 years into an OTR, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, okay, we're going to make this target. And if people have the kind of concerns that I'm hearing about the overlapping services and different agencies providing different sets of services, and it seems to me to be kind of a lack of coordination. I don't know if we want to let this go for 3 years. I'd be interested in hearing what the people who are proposing this feel about that. Mike?
I proposed it for 3 years, but I'm willing to modify that if you think 2 years is a better way to go.
Well, my concern is if we can't get some other funding stream to fund this after 2 years, assuming that it's a successful program, something's wrong. It's just, I don't know. I guess I would offer an amendment, I don't know if it's appropriate, that we do this for 2 years rather than 3 and work hard on looking into the situation with overlapping services and other sources of funding. Rich seconds that. I'm sorry, I heard something from the Travis.
I just was saying I'll second, Rich second.
Okay, great. I see Greg's got his hand up, and then Randy and Annie.
I've had my hand up for a while.
Oh, sorry, Annie. You were in front of Greg. Greg, let Annie talk.
Thanks. And I would like to say that there are some efforts, as far as I believe I've heard, on trying to figure out how we can coordinate all the different types of outreach workers as much as possible. But that's going to be part of the big issue, as much as we can't control all the agencies, but that is an effort that's being looked at. And so for the staffing, I would defer to Frank, because I know a lot of times, when I've done different jobs, when you start out and there's just funding for 2 years versus 3 years, if he thinks that that's an issue, because what's on the table is just funding it for 2 years. Do you think?
It's already been in operation for 1 year.
Do we have staff in the position right now? Because I thought we didn't.
We don't. It's family and children's services.
Right. So if there's not current staff in there right now, does Frank see this as an obstacle if we're only, say, funding it for 2 years to hire people? Because usually we do 3 years.
There are not currently people in the positions because of the uncertainty with the funding, right? The grant ran out, and as it was coming to the end of the grant year, the employees sought employment in other places. Right. So, the ongoing funding is, always important whenever we're trying to hire people. 2 years or 3 years, I think we're going to be back talking to you about this next year in some form or fashion either way. Yeah. 2 years is certainly amenable from my perspective.
Thank you. Greg, and then Randy? And then Veronica.
Yeah, I was going to kind of say what Ann said. We saw shortly after funding wasn't going to be continued with this program, a lot of the outreach workers sought other employment. So I think from a longevity standpoint, to try to find the best possible folks for this, because we did have, I think, some talented people in doing this work, but because of the uncertainty, and just because we commit to something for 3 years now, doesn't mean we have to commit to it later, because I do think next year or in 2 years that this could change. But I'm fine either way. I just want people to know that it probably creates some challenges, and we really probably only get about 18 months of certainty from somebody in a 2-year OTR.
Okay. Randy?
Yes, so this is not going to be targets that come out of our fund balance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Veronica?
Basically seconding what Greg said, so I wouldn't support reducing this to 2 years. Multi-year OTRs come back through our list of OTRs every year, so we're going to see this again, even if the default is to approve it. And so I think if we want to see some sort of, how is it going? Is this going well enough to continue? Not in this meeting, but we should define what that is and ask for an appropriate update in the ensuing years. But I think 3 years is good for the longevity. Also, just point of a clarification, when I said 7 street outreach workers, I didn't mean from family and children's, and I didn't mean number of positions. I meant like total active now across all the agencies, not counting vacancies and such.
Okay,
and
anybody
it's
else?
an estimate.
Mike?
You didn't ask me if it was friendly, and I said I was willing to modify it, so it would be friendly to me if it's friendly to the seconder.
No.
All right.
I think I was the seconder.
You want 3 years?
Yes, as Veronica said, we can go back and look at it, but I know I've also done that kind of work, not exactly that kind of work, but it's going to be hard to find people and to establish those relationships with people, and then they're there for 18 months and they're gone again.
All right, let's vote on the amendment.
Shauna Black?
This is on the amendment?
Yes.
No.
Travis Brooks?
It's the amendment for 2 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Randy Brown?
No.
Amanda Champion?
No.
Susan Curry?
No.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
No.
Ann Corman?
No.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
No.
Veronica Pillar?
No.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
No.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
5 ayes, 9 noes, motion fails.
Okay, so now we're voting on the 3-year OTR.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
Travis Brooks?
No.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
No.
12 ayes, 2 noes, motion passes.
Okay. We now have a break built in through the generosity of Norma. There's pizza in the back room because we are hungry from our hard work. When we come back, I'm going to reorder things a little bit because we have people waiting. We're going to do career pathways, IAED, and workforce development, and then we will do the food system plan. So let's take a break. Norma's scheduled us for 10 minutes, just enough time to get pizza.
Pizza was paid for by the legislators.
Yes.
So I don't even.
Yeah, you just don't know what they're looking for, though.
Right. And I can.
Okay, Rob has given us the magic thumb, and we are moving on. We have 3 amendments that seem to me to be pretty closely related. I filed 2 of them. One is to provide an additional $75,000 in one-time funding to Direct to Work, which is a program that Danny manages out of IAED. The other one that I filed was to restore the workforce development communications person to Target. And then the third one, and related, it was filed by Rich John. It was $65,000 in one-time funding for CCE's career pathways. All of these things work together synergistically to help provide soft skills and directly required work skills to people in our marginalized communities who don't ordinarily have access to the job market. I have Danny and Chris Spahn from IAED and our Workforce Development Board here to answer any questions you might have. I also sent you all a rather extensive write-up about this. I don't know in what particular order we want to take this. I guess I would start with IAED's Direct to Work program, and I invite Danny up. Danny and Chris, why don't you come up and sit between Shauna and Norma, and if people have questions about these amendments, they can ask you directly. I guess at this point, I would move the IAED $75,000 in one-time funding, and Rich seconds it. So questions, folks? Mike Sigler.
I got questions about how this is different than the $1.2 million IAED.
Well, if you read your email, you'd know, but Danny can explain it since she's here.
So IAED just recently was awarded $1.17 million. And that funding is going to be used to build out a construction trades industry partnership, which will be a very similar model to what our manufacturing industry partnership is. And all of that funding is pretty much allocated to partners to actually build out the work. And then there's additional $75,000 in there that will be earmarked for RFPs for community partners to bid on for supportive services, recruitment, and so on and so forth. So the request for the $75,000 is a capacity request to help me to build out the work as well.
Shauna.
I guess one thing that we have heard for years is that our unemployment rate has been so low and there just are not enough people to fill the jobs. Even if we were to vote on this, how are you going to find more people?
I guess it's the golden question for everyone. The difference is we are targeting un- and underemployed individuals, and we are serving Tompkins businesses, but we are looking to try to build out a southern tier recruitment approach. We know that we have a high commuter rate into the community, so this is where we've been working in partnership with Chris and the Workforce Development Board with all of the other workforce development boards in southern tier to also get these types of programs on their eligible training provider list, which means that if we're recruiting outside of Tompkins, then they would be eligible for tuition on all the other adjacent and surrounding counties for these programs that we're building out here. We're also trying, and this is the hard nut to crack, is how do you access underemployed, the individuals that are kind of piecemealing all those entry-level positions, to transition into a career pathway in an industry that offers career ladders and upward mobility. So that is something that we'll be working in partnership with Workforce Development Board, Office of Employment and Training, as well as the Careers Pathway Initiative of how do we crack that recruitment nut.
And I would add that if you had sat through as many meetings as Annie and I have with representatives from IAED and its predecessor, you would have heard repeatedly that part of the problem here is a mismatch between what our employers need and the skill sets that are available to job candidates here. And that is a mismatch that is being directly addressed by Danny's program. Okay, I've got Annie and Mike Lane and Randy and Dan.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have formulated a question, but I know in my head, looking at our budget presentations, for instance, and we look at people on TANF and other supports, and we had at the Planning Advisory Board today, we had a presentation regarding the housing burden for people living in Tompkins County. I think it was something like 80% of people that are renting our housing burden, which means the cost is so high. I don't have the right terms for it, but it's getting worse. The ratio between what they're earning and what they have to pay to live in this county.
More than 30% of your income.
I think it's up, yeah, it's even higher now.
Yeah.
It's up towards, I think, 60% now. So if we can get people to these good jobs, which we have, and we're going to have more of them. So if we can keep people in the pipeline to get them trained, to get off of these assistance, to be able to support themselves, their children, to be able to live in this county, to be able to live downtown, and we're helping the employers. I think it's a win-win. So I'm happy to support all of these programs, and I appreciate Deborah Dawson's email talking about the collaboration between all of these programs, and I think that's really important. We always like to see that. I know I do. So thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Okay, I've got Randy, Mike Lane, and Dan.
I just want to add something, going back to your comment, and thank you for your comments. These jobs we're talking about with direct to work is in manufacturing and then with the work grant, constructions and trades. These are well-paying jobs. Like, these are setting up people for long-term success like that, and that spills over onto their family and future generations, really. So, because there's a lot of jobs out there that people are employed, but they're going nowhere. They could work at the same place for 40 years and maybe get $1 raise throughout that whole entire time. So I think that's another aspect of this program that we have to focus on too, that manufacturing is growing and so is construction and trades. And this is a once in a generation opportunity that we have to show the Southern Tier that we can do something with this. So that's really what I'm excited about, on top of also being able to reach out to the rural areas. I'm a resident of Lansing, so I'm excited that we can kind of do that outreach, recruit more people, and then also in the city of Ithaca, and also just changing the narrative of who works in these jobs, women, people of color, just really spreading it out. And in order for us to do that, we have to have these positions, really, because if not, then we're not going to be able to meet the aspirations we have. So it's right there, and we can get there, but we need these positions to help support us.
Can I just mention one comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
That at the IDA over the past year and a half, I think just maybe a year, we added a provision that projects receiving a tax abatement had to have at least 75% local workers in constructing the project, and we usually can't meet that. So part of this money is to help get people into those fields, and these are really good paying jobs with good benefits. These are careers.
Career ladder jobs, yeah.
So for the Construction Trades Industry Partnership, there will be 2 initiatives under there. We are building out one side with the Trades Council, And the money that we've put in that is they will be paid participants to go through a pre-apprenticeship, which will then lead them into the entry exams of a chosen trade. The other side of that, the funding we put in there is for TST BOCES to revitalize their adult education construction readiness program, and those will be for individuals that are on a pathway for non-union positions. And they will also be paid participants as well.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, I've got Randy, Mike, Lane, and Dan.
Yeah, I support this. I think you've got good momentum and you're getting some results. I think it's a good investment. So.
Thanks, Randy. Mike?
One more effort to keep young people in our community, and I support it. They need to know that there are jobs here that pay well. They don't have to go down south to work in Winn-Dixie or Carrabba's or Chick-fil-A. They can work here and make money.
Thank you. Dan?
I'm going to vote against this amendment. And probably some of the other employment amendments. First of all, based on that idea that we do have the lowest unemployment rate in the state, and we do most months, and we have for like a decade or more. I understand the difference between just the unemployment rate and particular kinds of jobs, but still, that's the setting that we find ourselves in. And then for this particular one, the direct to work, you know, we got this sheet at the budget presentation, and if you take a look at the sheet, you'll see these statistics, that in the last year, this program has resulted in 13 people getting hired, a quarter of which were from out of the county, so that's 10 Tompkins County residents. The goal of the program is 75% retention, which I think is probably optimistic, but even if you stick to that number, that means this program has reached 7 Tompkins County residents over the year. So it's just not a big enough number for me to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, did you have your hand up again?
Now, sorry to speak again. Excuse me. Sorry to speak again, but on the low unemployment, a few years ago, Martha at IAED, why can't I think of her last name, did a whole study on
Armstrong.
how we, I'm sorry?
Armstrong.
Martha Armstrong, thank you. Did a wonderful study on how we are shortchanged by the complicated method that they use to derive what our unemployment rate is. And by having a low unemployment rate published by the state, we get hurt when it comes to grant funding and being looked at for other state programs, for example.
Thank you. Travis?
Yeah, I know firsthand what programs like this can do to help change people's lives and get people into better situations. We talk about housing, we talk about taxes, we talk about how everything is more expensive, and yet we have folks stuck in these jobs where they work and they don't have a career, there's no ladder, there's no increases in their pay over time with better skills. I would say that maybe there needs to be a better job in partnership and collaboration with other organizations and agencies in the community to attract folks into the program. You know, that's something that can be fixed if last year's numbers were low. So I hear Dan's point, and I agree to an extent. Just means we need to do a better job, and we need to collaborate more and work with other folks to get people into those jobs, and that could be done.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, I will support this, and I'm excited at the opportunity that these various resolutions or amendments in combination can accomplish, I believe. The employment numbers for our county really disguise that it's lots of different categories of employment, that there are a lot of people that can get a job and they're employed. What these programs are really looking at are, you used unemployed, underemployed, and a vague set I look at as people that really don't know what they're capable of doing until they're challenged a bit and given specific opportunities, and that's who we're really trying to target here. And the economic benefit to the larger community of taking somebody who is chronically underemployed and putting them into productive that pays dividends for years and years. So I will support this.
Thank you. I think it's important to distinguish between people who are employed in a dead-end job or multiple dead-end jobs to try to make ends meet, and moving those people and other unemployed people into careers. Not only the benefit to the people involved, but also to the businesses. I mean, one thing that we hear pretty consistently from Heather is that it's difficult to get companies to come here because they don't necessarily know if they're going to find a workforce that meets their needs. And we certainly want to be an attractive destination for new businesses. I see your hand, Greg.
Yeah, I think to Travis's point, and when we had the opportunity to meet with Danny and Chris and Heather last week, trying to build out those partnerships and collaborations is exactly what this funding will help support. Danny and team have done an incredible job building out a framework and an infrastructure and a program that works. I know when I first started on the legislature, a little less than 2 years ago, there was a lot of conversation, right? IAED needs to have a greater focus on workforce. And I think in the short period of time since Danny's come on to right now, this is pretty incredible to have a program, even if it has served a low number in a pilot year or, the first year getting off the ground. But this, again, to Danny's point, is about capacity building. And Danny and the team at IAED can only do so much. And being able to bring those partners together to create the pipeline so that we can have a greater pool of candidates is exactly what this will do, right? So this, Danny works on designing the program, building those relationships with employers. We need somebody to focus on building a pipeline to get candidates into this type of program so that Danny can do what she's done best so far, is continue to build out the infrastructure of the program itself. And that's why I totally support this. And I think this will open the door for a lot of people and make a much larger impact than just the first year numbers that we've seen so far.
Thank you. Shauna.
Yeah, I was wondering, Norma, do you mind putting the spreadsheet up so that we could see which amendments we've approved and where the tax levy is and what the numbers are? Because I think that's helpful for me in deciding probably everything moving forward.
Still at 0.02, because anything we've passed since since she last showed it.
Okay.
We have been one time.
Okay. Thank you.
0.17.
If I'm correct.
One's target.
Added that in here, though. So let me put that back down.
So which one are we going to do first, Deb?
We're talking about the direct-to-work IAED one-time $75,000 funding. Annie.
Real quick. Last year, whenever we did IAED's last contract, I think it was last year, we had that, I thought, some of us thought, a little bit low, and we said to IAED, if they were going to do workforce and they wanted to do more workforce work, come back to us and we will fund it. I'm not saying every single person, but a lot of us said that. Come back to us. That's what we want you to focus on, and here they are.
Okay, we ready to vote on this one? Katrina?
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
No.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
No.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler.
No.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
It's 10 ayes, 4 noes, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So the next one I will move is the Workforce Development Communications Specialist. This is restoration of target funding for this position that was subject to the soft hiring freeze that Lisa initiated because we gave her such a low fiscal target. This is a position that Chris needs to enhance his effectiveness as Workforce Development Director. He is currently a staff of one, I believe. And I congratulate him because for the first time since I've been on this legislature, we have a Workforce Development Director who seems to work cooperatively and harmoniously with the IAED people. And I want to make sure that he has every opportunity to become more successful and to assist as IAED moves forward with its workforce development initiative. So if you have questions, I guess I need a second. Mike Lane, thank you. And if you have questions, you can address them to Chris. So any questions? Wow. I don't know if that's good or bad, Chris.
Guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I guess we will. All right, so I guess we're ready to vote on this.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
No.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
That's 12 ayes, 2 noes, motion passes.
So I guess that's good, Chris. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you recognizing the workforce needs that we have. That people need to be on career pathways. There need to be other opportunities for them. And there's a lot of discouraged workers who aren't even counted in the unemployment rate. So that's also something you need to consider in general for people to think about. So I really appreciate it. And this is going to help us with our new department that's restructured. Currently, it's Diane and I on the board side, but we also have the Career Center coming together. So I really appreciate it. And I will make the best use of this position for you. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Chris and
Thank you,
Dana.
Chris. Okay, the next one that's related to these other two is the Career Pathways, one-time funding of $65,000. This is Rich John's baby, so I'm going to let him present it.
Yeah, this is a reduced amount from last year. It's at 65 instead of 85. And I do have some information on the program from the past year, but I would first want to put it on the table.
Mike seconds. Thank you.
As you know, Career Pathways is designed to try to get the various community agencies to collaborate and work together on finding people to work and helping them through the barriers that prevent them from working. And again, it's focused on the hardest to employ. They had some success in 2023. They went through, again, they seem like fairly small numbers, but the impact they had was pretty significant. They enrolled 14 people, 2 dropped out partway, but 12 individuals finished the training program. Career Pathways also provided employment navigation to support to Finger Lakes Reuse and to College Initiative Upstate. And they provided administration to try to connect all these not-for-profits. They have 2 individuals working at Reuse, an employee at Ithaca Bakery, 4 individuals working with Block Power on weatherization projects that are paid at $20 an hour. And because of our funding, they were able to obtain separate grant funding that actually is paying the salaries. And Aloja received word today that it looks likely that that will continue if we continue our funding. They have a $1.2 million project with the city of Ithaca for weatherization from a grant Senator Schumer helped obtain. And they have a final cohort for 2023 of 6 to 8 people that are starting in November, December. So there's the ongoing work of Career Pathways, but I think the exciting thing is the structure that Workforce and IAED are talking about with their programming to try to streamline the administration and to add 2 more pathways through career pathways, the outcome of the construction trades training and the manufacturing training. Happy to try to answer any questions.
Yeah, I just want to add that we've had 2 or 3 years, I guess, of one-time funding to this Career Pathways program, and one of the problems we've struggled with has been kind of a mushy sense of what the metrics are and what the deliverables were. And if we can get this program working in tandem with Danny's program, I hate to put too much of a burden on you, but Danny's the woman to whip this into shape. And Aloja has had pathways, excuse the word, into the community of underemployed and marginalized people, that, you know, reentry people, and that provides an avenue into Danny's program that it might be harder for her to set up without access to Aloja's contacts. So, I mean, that's why all of this kind of works together. So, yeah, questions? Oh, this is outstanding, people. Okay, let's vote.
Shauna Black?
No.
Travis Brooks?
No.
Randy Brown?
No.
Amanda Champion?
No.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
No.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
No.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
I have 8 ayes and 6 noes. Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Workforce Development, IAED, Direct Work, Career Pathways. Go forth and make our economy flourish. Thank you. Okay, the CCE Food System Plan is next. This is Randy's baby. So go for it, Randy.
It's not my baby, but it is a request from the Food Policy Council, and we, as you know, I'm a liaison for the legislature on the Food Policy Council, and they've been meeting every month and sometimes twice a month for the past year. And they've been implementing various goals and actions that are in the food system plan. And as they've gone through this process, there's been a dedicated group of people behind it. And they hit a roadblock and realized they couldn't really do any of the, succeed in any of the goals because they didn't have any money to succeed in them. So they hit this roadblock, and they can study it all they want, but they need to get funding in some way. And we realized pretty quickly that that they didn't have anybody in-house that could write grants, manage the grants, and they did a lot of research on the grants that are available, and there are hundreds of grants available in the food system world today, from various entities, state, federal, private, and they talked about a lot of different dreams they had and funding requests that they wanted, and they parted down from 4 areas to this one. Initially, they wanted $160,000. After a lot of discussion, the number came back at $115,000, and we also, they struggled to where this was going to live. So they met with the Human Service Coalition. It was too late in the game for them to do that. They didn't have an entity set up, which is another issue. And there are currently, CC has 2 people on the Food Policy Council who come to all those meetings. and they're already doing work separate from this. One of them is working with farmers that are interested in farming, trying to find land and whatnot. There are 42 people currently waiting to find access to land. And the big issue for this grant is to get funds to get land access, to share equipment for farmers. There's a lot of discussion on small farmers now because most people don't want to farm 100 acres. They want to do 10 acres, 15 acres, 20 acres. And there's also a lot of track record that some people are doing really well on this, providing food in Tompkins County and making good businesses out of it. You probably saw the one grant that was just awarded through Cornell, and Baz Berry is going to manage that when Cornell is actually not charging anything. They're letting her do that. That's going to be their contribution to that program. So this is where they came up after a lot of discussion, and it's for $115,000 over 2 years, $65,000 for year one, and they would have to do an RFQ to manage that process. That's why it went through CCE, a rest of proposal how that's done, and to find these grant writers and people to manage it. And so the actual amount going towards the grant person is $100,000, and the $15,000 would be for CC to manage it and to track once the grants are accepted. Somebody's got to make sure they're adhering to the requirements of the grant, much like we did with the ARPA funds. Somebody's got to oversee that. They've got to submit the right invoices and documentation, and so that's where that came from. CC has a new system now where it manages all their grants and requirements, and I know I get a grant from them for beautification. Cut down Newfield does. It's only $1,500, but you have to document and respond, and it's a very good system for tracking that. You have to submit invoices electronically. It's actually pretty cool. A pain in the butt, frankly, but so this is the request. I know Ann and Veronica, I went to the Food Policy Council Food System Summit, which was very well attended, and we learned a lot, I think. And I think this is a good investment. Right now, less than 6% of our food's coming from Tompkins County, and the goal is to implement the plans that the legislature accepted. So.
Thank you, Randy. Does anybody have questions for Randy? Comments on this? Veronica?
Yeah, I just want to add my support to, I mean, I don't know all the details Randy said, but to how important this is. I went to the Food System Summit, as Randy said, and there and before, one of the big requests coming out of the, what are they called? The Tompkins Food Future and all the people involved is support getting money. And I guess this is one way it costs a little money to get a lot more money, but that was requested again and again and again. You have all these small food providers, food pantries, farms that, there are grants out there, but they don't have the infrastructure to be getting them. I mean, we've talked about this in other fields, and this seems like it's even worse. But the food system members are, I think, really well positioned to take advantage of something like this. We talk about wanting to break down silos and streamline a realm of work, and I think the food system folks, I mean, thanks to, I guess, funding from this legislature before I was on it, put together a comprehensive plan and are really working through it and bringing groups together, and they're doing a great job. I trust them to be thoughtful with this fair, relatively small amount of money, which, if successful, and I don't see why it wouldn't be, will bring back in a lot more money into a really critical basic needs thing in our community, which is food.
Would you like to second Randy's motion?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Okay, Rich.
Yeah, I think this is a worthy project. I'm wondering, would it be friendly if the first-year funding was at 50K instead of 75?
They took it down from 100 already, so that's where we arrived at 65. So I feel that's...
Or 75?
75, right. Well, actually, it was after we added in the CCE portion of that. It was...
So how much are you looking for this year?
75 in first year, but 10 of that goes to CC to manage it.
Okay, Veronica?
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I have a technical question. If it's 75,000 the first year and 40,000 the second year, then is the requested amount for the 2024 budget only 75,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thought is that they think they can get their own funding for the rest of 2025 through these grants.
Annie?
I would like to propose an amendment on this, and hoping it's friendly, that it's, I kind of see this as a pilot program, but the contingency would be with them also working and getting into the Human Services Coalition within the next year, rather than coming to us separately if they need to. But I also attended the two-day food summit, and it was incredibly organized. And I won't, you guys hit all the really high points. So I won't repeat those, but it was just incredible. They really know what they're doing. We've had the presentations before several times here and in committees. So to me, this is just to help them prime the pump and get on their feet.
Yeah, I would say, Annie, that I wouldn't put this in contingency funding conditional on them getting through HSC. I think they know they need, I think they know that they need to get themselves on the HSC roster.
I'm just not put it in contingency, but this with that contingent, like adding it that it's contingent on them pursuing getting into that.
Well,
right?
it's either
Can we do that?
contingent or it's not.
Do we have to put it in contingency fund, or just them
No, I
agreeing
would
to
just
do
say,
it?
I would just say that I think Randy can convey this through the CCE board, that in the future, we want them, if they have asks of us, to run them through HSC. I mean, we've been funding them one way or another since their inception through CCE.
Okay.
And I think now they're at a point where they should be more or less freestanding.
Right, and so I made sure that at the food summit, I talked to what I thought were the key players, at least, and key organizers, and told them that.
Okay.
So I think they've gotten the message.
It's on their radar, no doubt.
Okay, good. Any other questions or concerns? Ready to vote?
Shauna Black.
No.
Travis Brooks.
No.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
No.
Susan Curry.
No.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
No.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler.
No.
Deborah Dawson.
No.
6 ayes, 8 noes, motion fails.
Okay. Next, this one was one that I filed. This is to restore another position that was subject to the soft hiring freeze, which was the probation position. This would be in Target. We all heard a very compelling presentation from the head of our probation department. And I really don't have anything to add to what he had to say. Rich?
I'd second.
Thank you. Any conversation, questions, concerns? Let's vote.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman, Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
14 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you. Next on our list was a legislative amendment forwarded by Michael Sigler, and he has withdrawn that. So we will move on to Shauna's legislative amendment to restore funding for a position in Tompkins County Assessment. Shauna, I'll let you discuss that. Move it.
Yeah, I would like to move Tompkins County Assessment, adding staff member to target, 84,565.
Amanda seconds, thank you. Take it away, Shauna.
Yeah, so in the many years that I have been here, Jay Franklin has come in every single year and said, I don't need anything this year. We're able to make do, but if there's ever a time, I will come to you guys and let you know. And this is the year that he came to us and let us know. So that department continues to be a statewide leader, and we want to make sure to provide the staffing that they desperately need.
Okay, anyone else? I figured out that if we feed people pizza, they won't ask questions.
True, that's right.
Okay, ready to vote. Katrina?
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
No.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Susan Curry,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
No.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
11 ayes, 3 noes, motion passes.
Okay. And next, we have an amendment for, okay, I'm confused. This is Board of Elections voting machine tech. I guess it was moved by Dan as an addition to Target? Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so the one time in parentheses is Mike Lane's support is for one time. Okay. All right, so Dan, did you want to move it? We'll get a second and then you can discuss it.
Yes, I would like to move. Thank you.
Can I get a second? Randy? Okay, go ahead, Dan.
It's $34,457 to put in Target to fully staff our Board of Elections. This is next year's presidential election year, but there's always a lot going on at the Board of Elections. And I'm just going to brief editorializing that the governments are under attack, local governments are under attack, elections are under attack, and it is the most critical thing. So I personally feel like we need to show them unflagging support. Thanks.
Dan, can you remind us, was this a position that was part of the soft hiring freeze, or is this an additional position that they need? I think Norma may be able to answer.
No, this was, actually, this is just to bring the 2 half-time positions to full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
no,
we
it is
already
not
have
part of
2
the freeze.
half-time people, and we want to have 2 full-time people?
They want to bring them up to,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Amanda? And then Mike?
I was just, to make sure I'm understanding this, so on the top corner, .59, that's
That's the tax levy increase presently,
okay.
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's the overall levy increase because we erased the 2%. Okay, great. Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, as Dan has said, next year is a presidential year, and it's not unusual for us to add staffing to the Board of Elections during presidential years, which I think is fine. I think if you're busier, you've got to do that. But I'm wondering whether we need to add this to Target. And so that's why I would like to move to make it one time.
Are you seconding that, Mike?
I am.
Okay, Mike and Mike. Any discussion about the, first of all, is that friendly? Does anyone find that unfriendly?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to vote on this. Thoughts? Shauna?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's anyone from Board of Elections here that might be able to answer if, in a non-presidential year, if we would still need this position.
Katrina tells me that our election commissioners are here, so if somebody wants to weigh in on this, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, Ken, this is Steve DeWitt. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, great.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, we're asking this for a target since 2019 when we started with electronic poll books and, and been moving forward with all sorts of election changes. The staffing needs to become more and more. And even this year, we are we're, in a year that's not quite as busy, we are still depending upon this position. And I think I just see that the way things are going, we're going to get new machines ideally, we're going to get new machines next year. We haven't signed any contracts yet, but, I just see that in the future, this is going to be an ongoing need.
Okay, thank you. So anybody else? So we're voting on an amendment that was offered by Mike Lane to, did that need to be seconded?
We got that.
Okay, good. To consider this as one time rather than target.
Shauna Black.
No.
Travis Brooks.
No.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
No.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
No.
Dan Klein.
No.
Ann Corman.
No.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
No.
Veronica Pillar.
No.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
No.
5 ayes, 9 noes, motion fails.
Okay, so now we're going to vote on whether we want to add this to target.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
No.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
13 ayes, 1 no, motion passes.
Okay, last one on the schedule for tonight. This was one that I filed. This, again, is for restoration of target funding, this time for a budget director, which is a position sorely needed in our administration department because we just cannot be working Lisa and Norma for 60 hours a week forever. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to this. I see Mike, I see Randy.
Got your second?
No, would you like to second?
second it.
All right, Mike's seconding it.
I just want to say that no fault to anybody here, because everyone's been doing their best, but without this position, I don't think we've had as prosperous a budget session this year as certainly I would like to see and compared to previous years. The fact that we haven't been able to have exposure to all the departments, and I don't think any committee that I've been on, and I don't know about the other committees, but there's been no deep dive into the budgets of those departments that haven't appeared before us. And I do think it's so important that we fill that position again, that over the years, the budget person has done a wonderful job for us. And really, I don't want to take anything away from Norma, but she's a deputy county administrator, and she has a lot of other tasks, just like now, when the administrator is away. It's important that she be able to focus on those duties.
Thank you, Mike. Randy?
Yeah, I support this. I struggle every time we add another position that's going to be on target. But I think budgeting is extremely important. They have new software. I hope to see that we see monthly budgets versus expense versus revenue in the future. I think that that's possible through the software and by having a person do this, so that we can really react to know if our expenses are above what our revenues are earlier than 12 or 18 months. So I support this.
Thank you. Annie?
I also support this for the reasons mentioned, but I also want to mention that I just want to be uber clear on the reference that that was made to all the departments not coming. That was a choice of the expanded budget committee. That was not anything to do with this position. So my experience this year with all the electronic resources available and all the updates that have been made, it's so much easier to find things and to access things on my computer, just to put a click and look at that department, look at this OTR, look at the rolling OTR amendments that we're doing. I can access them on my phone and keep up to date. So I think we're headed in the right direction. It's, whenever you make a change, it's going to be a little hard. But to me, doing this for the first time and the first time not going paperless, I was able to do it pretty easy. And so I want to thank especially Norma for this and all the people that worked on this, and for keeping us updated weekends, evenings, holiday, like Monday and stuff like that. I appreciate that. And we don't require that, but it was noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Yeah, I agree, Annie. The choice to not hear from every single department was not down to Norma and Lisa. You will recall last year that we had people pulling in OTRs that had never been presented to the county administrator through the budget process. And what we decided was that in order to make this a more responsible and predictable process, that those kinds of requests would be heard first by the program committees, so that Norma and Lisa and the legislative leadership would have some warning well in advance that there were needs that were arising in our departments, or there were new program initiatives that we wanted to pursue. That was ultimately, I think, on me and not on Norma or Lisa. And if y'all want to go back to the way it was next year, go for it. Meanwhile, I want to say that Lisa and Norma and their staff have just given us 250% in a very difficult year. We set a very low fiscal target. The state screwed us. We have no official budget director. We're working our way through new software. I mean, it just seems to me that everything that could have made this year more difficult happened. And I think it speaks volumes about Lisa and Norma's dedication and the dedication of all the staff that have worked on this, that we've gotten as far as we've gotten, as quickly as we've gotten, and I want to thank them.
You're here.
So, anybody else? Rich?
Just to the motion, I will support this, and part of the reason is that looking at what New York State did to counties in the 2024 cycle, And then looking at the condition of New York State, I think we can anticipate this will happen again in 2025. It's not going to get better. I think they're struggling on an ongoing basis. They're going to be hunting for more money from us. And having a budget director that can focus on this as their sole job is probably a really good idea.
Thanks, Rich. That's an excellent point.
Sorry to be
dismal.
Dismal.
A Debbie Downer?
Debbie Downer.
Okay. We ready to vote?
All right. Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Izzy.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
That's 14 ayes. Motion passes.
Congratulations, Norma. This is the last time you'll have to go through this.
Somebody's going to have to teach the next person.
Okay, Mike?
I'd just like to try something and go back to the food system plan. And I would like to move funding for that at $50,000 for one time.
Is there a second? Randy? Any further discussion? Veronica and then Randy.
I guess question for Randy, do we know if that's going to be useful and usable?
I think it will be. I mean, it won't be stretched as far, but I think it will be. They think they have some local people that they can do the RFP through versus trying to go out to an organization outside. I think that this, I mean, you've tasked these folks with coming up with a food system plan. They did. They're a vibrant group of people. They're very committed from every walk of life. I mean, there's Cougar Medical's there. You've got BOCES people there. You've got people from CC retired people. You've got a large amount of people that are doing a lot of things on their own time. They're all volunteers. So if you don't support them, then I think that at some point they're going to go, why are we doing this? So.
Okay, thank you. You had your hand up. Do you want to say anything else, or was that it? Okay. Anybody else?
Just a point of clarification. So this is amended to be $50,000 the first year. And is there anything in your, that's it, 1 year. Okay, thank you.
Okay, ready to vote?
Shauna Black.
No.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion. Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Sigler. Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
12 ayes, 2 noes. Motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
We're ahead of schedule, unbelievably. Pizza works its magic. I would like to consider that we move forward with the ITS position restoration.
What's the percentage we have now, Norma?
Yes. 0.82.
That was one time, so it doesn't matter.
The information technology, it's Amanda's.
I think we should vote on if people want to stay longer or not, and try to get it done in 2 nights or 3.
2 nights.
We're well ahead of what we were scheduled for, but I will take a poll. Who would like to at least do this one more position tonight?
I can do one more.
Thank you, Travis. Amanda, you want to take this one? I don't think it's going to be at all controversial.
Sure. I would move this amendment.
Okay, this is a restoration of funding for another soft hiring freeze position that was sorely needed. And it's for Target. And Shauna seconds. Any questions? Randy?
Could somebody just review what this position is going to do?
Ones that was, as Deborah said, taken out.
I didn't read tonight's yet, so.
Does anybody read these things?
Well, I didn't read it because it wasn't on the list. I was going to read them tomorrow, so that's why.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't.
Just closed my computer. I could open it back up. I didn't.
The systems administrator, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Norma.
Systems administrator position is actually integral to the department's ability to deal with the cybersecurity issues, and also is the same person who, or the same position that assists with the sheriff's department and their software, if that helps.
Thank you, Norma. Anybody else? Mike, did I see your hand?
Pass.
Okay. We ready to vote?
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Mike Ziegler.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
14 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Now we can go home tonight and look forward to having a head start on tomorrow. Good night.
Start tomorrow.
So it's 1 point.
5.
Oh, yeah, 5 o'clock tomorrow, not 4:30.
Already got a head start. We can start at 5:15, can't we? I'm looking at the schedule.
Or we could start at 4.